It's Pittsburgh versus Notre Dame, the last ranked matchup of the regular season for the Irish, and their last real chance to boost the resume and make a statement to the college football world. We've got your full preview and predictions coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the last 5 years. Today is Wednesday, November 12th, and thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Because of viewers and listeners like yourself, Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network in America. So we appreciate each and every one of you who made that possible. And before we dive in, I would like to ask you that you make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. And if you've got a question for the Friday mailbag, be sure to submit yours in the YouTube comments or on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. Now today, we have got a jam-packed episode as we get you ready for Notre Dame's massive showdown against the Pitt Panthers. First, we're going to start by breaking down the latest college football playoff rankings and what's truly at stake this weekend for Marcus Freeman's squad. Then I'll dive into a detailed scouting report on Pitt's offense and defense, including what makes their young quarterback Mason Heinschel dangerous and how Notre Dame's defense can rattle him early. Finally, we're going to wrap it up with a look at how special teams could have a huge impact on this game, my full game predictions, and why I believe this matchup could be a turning point for the Irish heading into the playoff stretch. But we did get the second edition of the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night, and as expected, Notre Dame moved up to number 9 in the CFP rankings. They're also ranked 9th in the AP and the coaches poll, so it wasn't really a big surprise. There's not a ton to dissect. BYU dropped to 12th after they got handled on the road against Texas Tech, and Notre Dame just basically moved up one and took their spot. And for all the complaints about Notre Dame's schedule, 4 of their 12 opponents are ranked in the top 25. Texas A&M is ranked 3. Miami is ranked number 15. They are now only 6 spots behind the Irish. USC moved up to 17, and Pitt moved up from 24 to 22 after their bye week, and Pitt is the only ranked team remaining on the schedule for the Irish, and that is why this is such an important game for Notre Dame. This is their last chance to make a definitive, emphatic statement to the committee and the college football world that they are one of the 12 best teams in the country, and they deserve a shot at the national title. So kickoff is set at noon Eastern inside Acrisure Stadium on Saturday, November 15th, and this game will air on ABC. So if you've got YouTube TV, I would encourage you to download the ESPN app. Maybe find someone you know who has a cable provider, because I don't think that dispute between Disney and Google and YouTube TV is going to get resolved by Saturday. So get that worked out now. I'm giving you multiple days of warning before the game kicks off at noon Eastern on Saturday. Joe Tessitore and Jesse Palmer are going to be on the call, and it feels like whenever those two are on the call for a Notre Dame game, it usually has some theatrics and comes down to the wire. I hope that doesn't happen on Saturday, but that's who's going to be on the call, along with Louisville legend Katie George on the sideline. And I don't want to jinx it, but right now, the forecast for Saturday looks pretty good. I'm seeing a high of 62 with cloudy skies and a 24% chance of rain during the day. Things could change between now and then, obviously, but that is looking like prime football weather. And Notre Dame has not had very much luck with the weather all year, so I think everyone would welcome a 62 and cloudy day on Saturday. The Notre Dame-Pittsburgh matchup is actually the 5th most played series in program history. It's not officially a rivalry for either school, but there's plenty of history and bad blood between these two programs, and Saturday is going to mark the 74th meeting between the two schools, and Notre Dame leads the all-time series 51-21-1. The Irish have won 7 out of the last 8 matchups against Pitt, dating back to 2010, but it has not always been easy. I probably don't have to tell you that. 4 of those 7 wins were one-possession games, including some absolute nail-biters back in 2012. The game one did 3 overtimes, I believe it was. Pitt had multiple chances to win that game, but they missed a game-winning field goal. I think Notre Dame got away with having 2 guys on the field with the same number, and then Everett Golson ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown. And then Notre Dame had a comeback to beat Pitt in 2018 on a Miles Boykin touchdown pass from Ian Book late in the fourth quarter in both seasons, where Notre Dame escaped Pitt and ultimately finished the regular season undefeated. And Pitt is led by head coach Pat Narduzzi. We're going to talk about Pat quite a bit on today's show. And Narduzzi is in his 12th season with the Panthers. He holds a 79-58 career record, so he's basically always just above average. And in over a decade as a head coach, his only double-digit win season came in 2021 with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison when Pitt finished 11-3 on the year. And for someone who has a lot to say about Notre Dame, which Pat Narduzzi certainly does, he is 0-4 against the Irish as head coach, and he's actually 0 for his last 7, dating back to his days as a defensive coordinator for Michigan State. Now, Pitt enters this game on a 5-game winning streak. They started the year 2-2 with losses to West Virginia and Louisville before they made a quarterback change. Since benching Eli Holstein for true freshman Mason Heinchel, the Panthers have won 5 straight, including a 34-31 win over Florida State and convincing victories over Syracuse without their starting quarterback Steve Angeli, NC State, and Stanford. But Notre Dame is still favored by 11.5 points on FanDuel, and the over-under is 55.5. So Vegas is projecting something close to a 34-21 win for the Irish. Not exactly, but somewhere in the ballpark of 34-21. This is a massive game for Notre Dame. It's a huge game for both programs, despite what Pat Narduzzi might say. But every game for Notre Dame, ever since they played Texas A&M, has been an elimination game, and this one is no different. If they lose, they're out of the playoff race, and this season is going to go down as a major disappointment. But this game is more than just playoff math. It's about making a statement to the rest of their country in their last big game of the regular season, because nothing is going to move the needle if they go out there and they stomp Syracuse on senior day and then they go on the road and beat Stanford. That is what they are supposed to do. So their resume can only be hurt after this game. This is their last chance to improve it. And the Irish have been playing for their postseason lives since mid-September, but the only game that truly felt like a playoff atmosphere was the win over USC. You could feel the weight of that moment inside Notre Dame Stadium that night, and both teams traded blows until the Irish ultimately pulled away in the fourth quarter. But those are two very talented teams going at it. USC actually has a chance to make the college football playoff now too, and I think Saturday is going to have a similar feel on the road. College Game Day is going to be in Pittsburgh on a Saturday for the first time since 2005 when Pitt hosted, let me check my notes here, Notre Dame. And even though the set will technically be in Pitt's backyard, everyone knows the real draw is Notre Dame. And yes, Pitt fans, I do know that College Game Day was in Pittsburgh in 2022, but that was on a Thursday for the Backyard Brawl. I'm talking about Saturdays when there's a bunch of other games to pick from. College Game Day decided to go to Pittsburgh for Notre Dame versus the Panthers. And it's going to be a loaded day of college football with ranked matchups in every single window. This game kicks off the afternoon slate, meaning a massive audience will be tuning in to watch the Irish for what I expect is the first time in a while. And lately, it feels like everyone has something to say about Notre Dame. We got a taste of it in the days after the first college football playoff rankings were released last week, but then it really ramped up over the weekend. Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire took a drive-by shot at Notre Dame after the Red Raiders win over BYU, saying, quote, "I have a lot of respect for BYU entering a conference and not playing an independent schedule like other people. Y'all already know who that is," end quote. I would like to point out that Notre Dame's strength of schedule is actually better than Texas Tech's, but that's neither here nor there. And it's not just McGuire. Plenty of the usual suspects in the national media have piled on, trying to justify why the Irish should not be ranked ahead of other two-loss teams. And sure, there is certainly a case for Oklahoma, and there's a case for Texas, but ironically, most of the loudest critics ignore the facts. Like, they claim that Notre Dame's ranking is based on their brand or vibes, but Notre Dame's advanced metrics like strength of record all back up their rankings. So it's not vibes, it's data. But even data can be manipulated, as we saw from the official ACC football Twitter account on Monday. If you're not chronically online, first of all, congrats to you. But the official ACC account posted a blind resume graphic comparing Miami, Team A in this graphic, to Notre Dame, Team B, to argue that Miami deserved to be ranked higher. Of course, they conveniently left out that Miami has lost 2 of its last 4, and they're not doing the same comparison for Louisville, who beat Miami head-to-head, but is currently ranked behind the Hurricanes. And to me, it is absurd that the ACC would take a swipe at Notre Dame, given how much the Irish have elevated that conference financially and competitively in pretty much every sport, plus football, because of their 5-game arrangement. I understand that Notre Dame is independent in football, but still, the university has done a lot for the ACC, and you could make the argument that there might not be an ACC if not for the partnership between Notre Dame and the conference. And then there's Pat Narduzzi, who went on, I guess you can call it a childish rant this week. When he was asked if this was a must-win game, this is how he responded. Quote, "Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm actually glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I'll gladly get beat 103 or 110-10 in that game. They could put up 100 up on us as long as we win the next 2 after that." End quote. Come on, man. Yes, I understand that Pitt is tied atop the ACC and their best chance at making the playoffs is by winning the conference championship. But he's clearly trying to make a point about Notre Dame because he's been very vocal about his disdain for the Irish in the past. So if that's his way of protesting Notre Dame's independence, that's pathetic, frankly. But it's also exactly what we've come to expect from him. So seemingly, no matter where you look, Notre Dame is being disrespected, from random coaches in the Big 12 to the ACC itself to the guy across the sideline on Saturday. The disrespect has been loud. And from what I've gathered, the outside noise has reached the Notre Dame locker room. And it hasn't been well received from the head coach on down. And as we saw last year, after the Orange Bowl press conference with James Franklin, Marcus Freeman does not take disrespect lightly. And Saturday is about silencing the noise, reminding everyone that this team doesn't need to say anything. They're going to prove it on the field. If they take care of business and they handle Pitt, all that outside noise will start to fade away, and Notre Dame is going to be right back in the driver's seat for a return to the college football playoff. This is the biggest game left in the regular season for Notre Dame, and it's Pitt's biggest home game in years, but make no mistake, it's about the team in the blue and gold, not the royal and mustard. All right, now that we've set the stage, let's take a closer look at the team standing in their way, a Pitt offense that has been red hot since making a quarterback change, and a defense that's stingy against the run. That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Welcome back to Locked On Irish, and before we dive into the scouting report on Pitt, I wanted to say thank you again for making this your first watch or listen of the day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. All right, let's take a look at Pittsburgh's offense going up against Notre Dame's defense. And it's funny, because Pat Narduzzi once complained that his team passed the ball too much when they had Kenny Pickett, who went on to become a second-round NFL draft pick, and a wide receiver by the name of Jordan Addison. Seriously, go look it up. He said it after the season, but he was actually upset that his team passed the ball too much down the field. Now, the irony is that Pitt's offense is now having one of its best seasons in years, and it's built entirely around the passing game. The reason for that turnaround is offensive coordinator Cade Bell. Bell is in his second season as the OC, and his philosophy is built on tempo and aggression. Narduzzi himself described Bell's system as, quote, relentlessly fast and aggressive, so expect plenty of no-huddle, up-tempo looks to try to confuse the defense and try to create some momentum every time they get some positive yardage. The Panthers are averaging 445 yards per game and 40 points per game since they made that quarterback change from Eli Holstein to Mason Heinschel. Heinschel is a true freshman. He's just 18 years old, and he was a low 3-star recruit coming out of high school, and he took over Holstein's job after 4 games. Holstein went out there and threw 6 interceptions through the first 4. They started out 2-2, and then once Mason got the job, he has not looked back. He is averaging over 300 passing yards per game with 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions through just 5 starts. He has shown impressive poise for a freshman, but he still makes some rookie mistakes. He has thrown 5 picks on 184 attempts, so he's averaging 1 interception, roughly 1 every 30 passes, and he's been prone to holding the ball too long, which has led to him being sacked 16 times. And I know the offensive line isn't great at Pitt, but still, it's kind of like Russell Wilson when he started to, let's say, shift out of his prime when he was trying to create a bunch of plays, and then he'd hold the ball too long, and then he'd get sacked, and then he'd blame the offensive line. They're like, look, dude, we can't block for 15 seconds. That happens sometimes with Mason Heinchel, which is something that you'd expect with a true freshman quarterback. But they also have some talented running backs. Number 0 running back, Desmond Reed, was actually a preseason All-American, but he's been dealing with this lingering ankle injury that has prevented him from being 100% throughout the season. He did go off against Florida State back in October. He had over 200 total yards of offense in that game, but 155 of those yards came as a receiver. He had 8 receptions in that game, and he's only averaging 44 rushing yards per game, but Pitt loves using him in the passing game, so he's been really dynamic for the offense when he's been healthy. When he's not been healthy, number 25, running back Jakarian Turner has been the lead running back. He's another true freshman who's filled in. He had a breakout game in their last regular season game against Stanford before the bye week, had over 120 rushing yards, but otherwise, he's just been pretty serviceable. At wide receiver, keep an eye out for number 2, Kenny Johnson. He's their best wide receiver on the team. He's got 37 catches on the year for 573 yards and 4 touchdowns. He can do a bunch of different things. He's like their big body receiver, so they can throw it to him. He can make some contested catches, but he's also very good with the ball in his hands. He contributes on special teams, so they just try to get him touches in a variety of ways. But he is not their only good wide receiver. They have 3 guys that they like to go to, and they like to split it up between the 3 of them. Like Kenny Johnson is their leading wideout, but they also have number 5, Raphael Williams Jr., who's right behind him. Williams Jr. is only 5'10", 165 pounds, but he actually leads the team with 6 receiving touchdowns. He is a very savvy route runner and just a reliable possession receiver. He reminds me a lot of Will Pauling. Little guy who knows how to get separation and get yards after the catch, and he's especially difficult in man-to-man situations. And then you have number 3, Kataris Hicks. He's undersized, but he is extremely explosive. He is their best deep ball threat. He had an 84-yard touchdown against NC State, and he only has 19 catches on the year, but he is averaging 18.6 yards per reception. So Heinchel has been good, but honestly, these wide receivers are a big reason why this passing game has been elevated this season. Heinchel is just a little bit better at distributing the ball to all 3 of these guys. Their strengths on the offense rely mostly around the passing game. They are 17th in yards per completion on the year. They are 7th in passing touchdowns, and they have been very explosive. They have 18 completions of 30 or more yards. But for as good as their passing game has been, they have been very inconsistent running the ball. They are 112th in the country in yards per carry, averaging just 3.7 yards per rush. They are bottom 15 nationally in sacks allowed with 26, and they are outside the top 100 in tackles for loss allowed. They've given up 53 on the year. As I said earlier, some of that is on Heinchel for holding the ball, but 53 tackles for loss, that's also on the offensive line. They have struggled mightily, and they have been very poor on third down. They've only converted 36.6% of the time. So my keys for the Notre Dame defense. Number 1, make life hell for Heinchel. He's been very good for a true freshman, and he has clearly elevated Pitt's offense. But he has also not faced a defense anywhere close to Notre Dame's level. The best defense that Heinchel has seen this year is Florida State. And Florida State ranks 70th in team passing efficiency defense. Other than that, Boston College, Syracuse, and Stanford are all in the bottom 20 nationally, and NC State is 95th. So it's not like he's faced a gauntlet on defense. And it's fair to say, well, Notre Dame hasn't really done that either. That's true. But Notre Dame has taken care of business against pretty much every defense they faced, except for Miami in that season opener when Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor just took over. But back to this Notre Dame defense. Despite the 2 awful games to start the year, they're now 24th in team passing efficiency defense. Chris Ash's defense as a whole has been lights out as of late, so I expect Notre Dame to mix coverages and disguise pressures to confuse the young quarterback and force him into mistakes. They can't blitz recklessly, however, because Pitt has enough playmakers to make you pay, but if they generate a couple interceptions or some drive-killing sacks, that should be enough to swing the game. My second key for the Notre Dame defense, you've got to limit the explosive plays. They're going to give up some chunk plays. That happens when you play man coverage as much as Notre Dame does. We saw it against USC. They were getting 15-yard passes. They were getting 20-yard passes. But there's a difference between giving up 20-yard gains and surrendering 60-yard touchdowns like they did to Jacoby Lane. Like, they can't afford another breakdown like the one that led to the Jacoby Lane touchdown. You have to force Pitt to string together long drives, because the more plays they run, the higher the chance that Heinzel makes a mistake. I am not concerned at all about Pitt running the ball on Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been dominating every single team they face when it comes to running the ball. So Pitt's going to try to air it out. Notre Dame is going to be ready for that. They just have to keep everything in front of them. All right, now let's switch it over to the other side of the ball and take a look at Pitt on defense. And this is your prototypical Pat Narduzzi defense. They're physical, they're aggressive, and they're blitz heavy. Now, they were pretty awful last year, but they are much improved this season. They're 43rd in points per game allowed and 16th in yards per play allowed. They like to sell out to stop the run and create pressure on the quarterback, and they are certainly not afraid to blitz on early downs, which can generate turnovers, but also leaves them vulnerable to some big plays. Some players to know. Number 44, defensive lineman, Jimmy Scott. He leads the team with 4 sacks, and he has 7.5 total TFLs. He also has a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. So Scott is a disruptive player. But this defense goes as their linebackers go, and they have a great trio of linebackers. That is actually something we talked about in the preseason, and so far, they have lived up to their billing. The best linebacker and really the best defender on the team this season is number 0, Braylon Lovelace. He's been their best player this season. He's been able to stay healthy all year while the rest of the team has had a bunch of different injuries, but he leads the team in tackles with 55, and he's just been a steady, consistent presence for this Panthers defense. But they've also got number 3, linebacker, Rasheem Biles. He is tied for second on the team in tackles. He leads the team with 8.5 TFLs. He has 2 sacks and interception in just 6 games. He has missed the last 3 games due to injury, but he is expected to be full go on Saturday after the bye week. And then their third linebacker that I was talking about is number 9, Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis is tied with Biles, second on the team in tackles, also has 5.5 TFLs, and he leads the team with 2 interceptions, has 3 pass breakups, and also a forced fumble. So Lewis and Biles are pretty similar in that they like to blitz the quarterback, but they're also very sound in coverage. Like, the fact that Lewis, as a linebacker, has 2 interceptions and 3 pass breakups is really effective. So it's not a situation where, like, if they get him one-on-one with a running back, like, Lewis can hold his own. In the secondary, number 28, Sean Lee Jr. has been their best cornerback to date. He's another true freshman who has stepped up in a big way for this team. He's been a lockdown corner all year. He has 4 pass breakups this season, and he had a pick 6 in their last game against Stanford. When you look at the defense as a whole, their strength is that they are elite against the run. They are first nationally in yards per carry allowed. They are only averaging 2.4 yards per carry. They are top 5 in both rushing yards per game and tackles for loss. They have allowed only 5 runs of 20 more yards all season. They've also been extremely opportunistic. They have 10 interceptions and 5 fumble recoveries. And even though they're not elite in coverage, they're very dangerous up front because they've already had 24 sacks on the year, which is 18th nationally. And they're really good on the money down. Opponents convert just 34% of the time on third down. But their weakness is in the secondary. Their pass defense has been mediocre this year. They're 71st in pass efficiency. They're 97th in pass yards allowed per game, and they've been very vulnerable to explosives, which is a byproduct of the type of scheme that they play. They've already surrendered 14 completions of 30 or more yards, and they really struggle against athletic tight ends down the seam. So if you're looking at the Notre Dame offense, you're thinking, man, this could be another big game for Eli Raridon. This game will certainly be the one where he finally finds the end zone, right? Well, as I said, all week on the show, I've given up on the Eli Raridon anytime touchdown bet. But one more weakness I want to throw at you about this Pitt defense. They are one of the worst red zone defenses in the country. Bottom 5 nationally out of 136 FBS teams. They are allowing scores on 95% of opponent trips to the red zone. So, my keys for the Notre Dame offense. Number 1, they got to keep CJ Carr clean. This will be Notre Dame's biggest test in the trenches since Texas A&M. Pitt's front 7 is aggressive, they're disruptive, and they've got some real dudes in that front seven. They're going to sell out to stop the run and pressure the quarterback, and a lot of teams have tried to do that as of late. Navy stacked a bunch of dudes in the box. Boston College put 8 and 7 guys in the box, and they were able to hold Notre Dame's running attack in check for the most part, and then Jeremiah Love would break open with a big play. But this is going to be a little bit different because Pitt's not only going to stack the box, they have much better players than the teams Notre Dame has been facing lately. And if we want to go back to the USC game, USC has some talented players on defense, but for whatever reason, in the driving rain, they decided to have like 5 or 6 guys in the box. So this is going to be a very difficult test for the offensive line, particularly in pass pro, because Pat Narduzzi is going to try to get after Carr as much as possible. They're going to try to get some disruptive run plays in early downs to move Notre Dame behind the sticks. So expect some negative runs early, but if they can just hit on a few chunk run plays like we've seen all year, that could tilt the game. And as long as the offensive line is able to protect Carr, they should be all right. My second key for the Notre Dame offense, they've got to win the one-on-one battles on the outside. Pitt, like Notre Dame, plays a ton of man coverage. It is a staple of any Pat Narduzzi defense. He trusts his corners to hold up while the front brings pressure, but Notre Dame's pass catchers, Malachi Fields, Jordan Faison, Will Pauling, and Eli Raridon, have been rolling lately, and this could be a big stage for them. If the Irish hit some early shots downfield, Pitt is going to be forced to drop more defenders into coverage, which should open up the run game later. And if Carr has time, he's going to have opportunities to carve up the secondary. We've been talking about it all year on the show. Carr has been elite against the blitz all season long. He has been blitzed on 42% of his dropbacks, and he has completed 68% of his passes for 896 yards, 11 touchdowns to 2 interceptions against the blitz. So it's going to come down to Carr and the offensive line recognizing those blitzes, setting the protections, and then executing with precision. If they do that, they could really light up the scoreboard on Pat Narduzzi's defense. All right, so we've covered the matchups on both sides of the ball, but special teams could be where this game turns. So let's break down how Notre Dame can gain an edge in the third phase, and I'll give you my full prediction coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So last week we were talking about Victor Wembanyama winning the MVP. This week we're focused on VJ Edgecombe winning Rookie of the Year. You can get him at plus 155 right now on FanDuel. And FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to Locked On Irish. This is your official game preview for Notre Dame's upcoming game against the Pitt Panthers. And one key area to this game that I don't think many people are talking about is special teams. And it's rare that you say there's going to be a chess match in the third phase, but I think that is absolutely going to be the case on Saturday between Marty Biagi, the special teams coordinator for Notre Dame, and Jacob Branowski, the special teams coordinator for Pitt. Pitt has been very good in the third phase all season long. Like Notre Dame, Pitt is starting a freshman kicker. But unlike Notre Dame, Trey Bukowski has been solid for the Panthers all season long, although he did have an extra point block, so they have that in common with Notre Dame. Bukowski is 19 for 21 on field goal attempts, and he is a perfect 13 for 13 inside 40 yards. He's 6 for 8 beyond 40 with a long of 47 on the season. Pitt has been strong in punt coverage. They're top 20 nationally in net punting, and they've been very aggressive on special teams. They've had one kick block this year, and they've also blocked a punt this season, and they've been especially dynamic in the return game. Running back Desmond Reed took a punt return to the house in his first opportunity of the year back in their season opener against Duquesne. And Kenny Johnson, the wide receiver, has also returned kicks in the past, but he's also become their primary punt returner ever since Reed went down with an injury. And Johnson had a 66-yard punt return for a touchdown at the end of the first half against Syracuse. And Pitt has been rotating kick returners, and while none of them have taken one back to the house, they rank just outside the top 20 nationally in average kick return yardage. This is not technically special teams, but I did want to point out that as a team, Pitt is one of the 5 most penalized teams in the entire country. They are averaging 8.4 penalties per game. So just wanted to throw that in there. Now, as we look at the keys for Notre Dame on special teams, my number one key, they got to match aggression with aggression. Notre Dame prides itself on winning the third phase, but that's not going to be easy against a Pitt team that also values special teams as much as anyone. The Irish blocked a punt to open the Texas A&M game, and they've come close several times since, but they have not connected. If they get one against Pitt, it could be a massive momentum swing. And Jadarian Price has 2 kickoff return touchdowns this year, and they might need another spark from him on Saturday. Opponents have done a better job containing him lately, so we're going to see what happens if they're even willing to give him an opportunity. But if Price gets one, I'm always going to think he has a chance to take it back to the house. It feels like Notre Dame has gone to the well a few too many times with fake punts this year. They even lined up for one against Navy before they ultimately called a timeout, they being the midshipmen. I'm sure they've got something schemed up for Pitt here, but I just hope that they pick their spots wisely. Like, other teams are scouting for it now, and if you're going to go for it on 4th down, you probably have a better shot of just rolling your offense out there if the other team knows that you're running a fake. So maybe they'll find a new way to bring in the element of surprise. Maybe it's a fake field goal. I'm not really sure. But the fake punt thing is... It's out there, right? Everyone kind of expects that it's coming. But I don't know. Maybe Marty Biaggi has even more tricks up his sleeve than we think. I do have one other key for Notre Dame on special teams. Rinse and repeat for kicker Eric Schmidt. Schmidt did exactly what he needed to against Navy. He hit every extra point, and he sent all 8 kickoffs for touchbacks. That's the expectation again on Saturday. I doubt they're going to trot him out there for a long field goal in a tight game, but if it's early and they have a short attempt, they might give him a shot. Ideally, he's just limited to his basic duties, and as long as he executes those, he keeps knocking in those extra points, and he keeps kicking the ball in the end zone, Notre Dame should be just fine. All right, it's time for predictions. I am so excited for this game. Like, I love the idea of Notre Dame going on the road to face a Pitt team with momentum, a confident fan base, and head coach who openly hates the Irish. And you add in the element of college game day, it is going to be an absolute spectacle Saturday afternoon in Pittsburgh. Marcus Freeman and his team absolutely understand the magnitude of this moment, and I am confident that he is going to have them ready to play. This is the kind of stage that Marcus Freeman lives for, and it feels like the team has finally taken on his personality. It might have taken longer than most of us fans would have hoped for, but I thought Jaden Osbury's post-game comments after the win over Navy were really telling when he said that the players are holding each other accountable. And as I've said many times in the show, usually in the offseason, the best teams are always player-led. That's what made last year's group so special. They were led by Riley Leonard and Xavier Watts and Jack Kaiser, and I believe that this team is starting to form the same leadership. Those leaders are going to need to step up on Saturday, though, when the Irish face their first real adversity since USC, because I think Pitt is going to come out fired up from the opening kickoff. This is a huge moment for their program, but pregame emotion can only carry you so far. So I expect a back-and-forth first half with some explosive plays from both offenses, and I think it's going to be tough sledding early on for Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and the Notre Dame running backs to find consistent running room, but they're going to pop a couple of big runs that change the game, and I'm expecting a big day from wide receiver Malachi Fields. Notre Dame went to him early and often against Navy, and he delivered with 4 catches for 97 yards, and he is just a nightmare matchup in man coverage, and I think CJ Carr is going to target him often when Pitt decides to bring pressure, and this game has the makings of a really fun quarterback duel between Carr and Mason Heinchel, but ultimately, I think Notre Dame's defense is going to be the difference. Pitt might start hot, but as the game goes on, I trust the Irish defense to settle in, get some stops, and force the true freshman into costly mistakes, maybe even a defensive touchdown. Leonard Moore continues to lock down one side of the field, and now with Devontae Smith and potentially Christian Gray getting healthy again, the secondary shouldn't make life miserable for Heinchel as the game goes on. And if the front seven is able to get pressure on him early, it could be wraps. So give me Notre Dame 42-21 in a statement win. They get the win, they get the cover, they hit the over, and this win is going to resonate across college football and remind everyone that this Irish team is for real. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for tuning in and for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, leave a like and a rate or review the podcast because it helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. Who wouldn't want that? Right? And don't forget to send in your mailbag questions for Friday's episode, and make sure to join me here tomorrow for a special crossover show with Brian Smith from the Portal Podcast. Love Brian, haven't talked to him in a while, but we're going to talk about the biggest storylines around Notre Dame football heading into the stretch run. It was a lot of fun. I think you're going to enjoy it. I'll see you then.